You are standing on red dirt. The sky above you is the color of a bruise at dawn, pale pink, bleeding into rust. The temperature is -60 degrees Celsius. You cannot breathe. You cannot take off your helmet. You cannot run outside to feel the wind because there is no wind strong enough to feel. And if there were, it would sandblast the skin off your face in seconds. This is Mars. And someone decided to build a city here. Right now, somewhere in a boardroom on Earth, engineers and billionaires are arguing about who gets to go first. Politicians are arguing about who owns the land. Scientists are arguing about whether any of this is even possible. But let's say they figure it out. Let's say the first colony launches, maybe 50 years from now, maybe 20, maybe sooner than anyone expects. When that colony is built, it will not be equal. Nothing humanity has ever built has been equal. There will be ranks, there will be levels, and your entire life on Mars, how you eat, where you sleep, how long you survive, will depend entirely on where you sit inside that structure. This is your life. At every rank, in humanity's first city on another planet. Level 1. You applied 2 years ago. You trained for 18 months in a facility in the Nevada desert that was designed to feel like Mars. You slept in a habitat the size of a school bus. You ate reconstituted protein paste and learned to fix oxygen recyclers with your hands. You passed the psychological evaluation, the physical screening, the background check. You were selected out of 900,000 applicants. You arrive on Mars as a general colonist. That sounds important. It is not. At level 1, you are labor. Your bunk is 6 feet long and 2 feet wide, bolted to the wall of Habitat Block C. You share a room with 3 other people. The air smells like recycled plastic and something faintly chemical. The scrubbers pulling CO2 out of the atmosphere one breath at a time. You are assigned to a team. Your job for the first 6 months is construction support, carrying equipment, sealing modules, running cables through tunnels in a pressurized suit that weighs more than a small child. You are not miserable. That is the thing nobody tells you before you leave Earth. You expected despair. What you get instead is purpose so overwhelming it crowds out almost everything else. Every single thing you do matters. If you fail to seal that connector properly, people die. If your team's water recycling unit breaks down and nobody notices, everyone on the Eastern Bloc goes thirsty. There is no bureaucracy to absorb your mistakes. There is no manager above you who will catch it. It lands on you, and you feel that weight, and somehow it feels good. But you are cold. You are hungry in a way that calorie counts cannot fully explain. You miss sunlight that doesn't come through 6 inches of radiation shielding, and you are at the very bottom of a system that is already beginning to form around you. By level 10, you have been on Mars for a year. You know the tunnels. You know which pressurization locks stick in the cold. You know the names of the 70 people in your sector and which of them will cover your shift when you are sick and which of them will not. You have been promoted to skilled labor. You operate equipment now, run maintenance on the hydroponic bays, maybe train the newer arrivals coming in on the resupply ships. The hierarchy has names now, not official ones. Nobody put them in a document, but everyone knows. The founders, the first 43 people who arrived before the main colony, carry a quiet authority that has nothing to do with their official titles. When one of them walks into a room and says something, people listen differently. You are not a founder. You arrived in the second wave. That gap is small, and it is permanent. At level 15, you get assigned to a specialty track. This is where the colony begins sorting people in ways that will define the rest of their lives on Mars. Medical track, engineering track, agriculture track, research track, operations track. The engineers sleep slightly better. Their quarters are 1 bay over from the main tunnel, which means slightly less noise. The medical staff get priority on fresh vegetables from the hydroponic bays because malnourished doctors are a colony liability. These are not luxuries. They are justified rationally, but you notice them. Level 25, you have been on Mars for 3 years. You have a small room to yourself now, one of the 4 by 3 meter private quarters in the expanded residential block. You have a screen on the wall. You can watch films from Earth, though they arrive with a 20-minute delay and feel increasingly like dispatches from a world you used to know. You have earned enough colony credits to order personal items on the next resupply ship, a specific brand of coffee, a book, a photograph printed on real paper. The photograph costs $11,000 to ship. You order it anyway. Level 30. The colony has been running for 4 years, and the social structure is no longer informal. There are councils now, resource allocation committees, a health authority, a construction board. The people who sit on these bodies are not elected exactly. They are selected by a combination of seniority, demonstrated competence, and the quiet consensus of people who already hold power. You can see it forming. You can see the way certain names appear on every committee. You can see the way certain decisions get made in conversations that happen before the official meetings. At level 30, you are competent enough to be noticed and junior enough to be useful without being threatening. You are invited into rooms. You are not invited into the conversations that happen after the rooms empty out. Level 40. Something has shifted. You are now a department lead. 40 people report to you in the agricultural division. Mars cannot survive on Earth resupply alone. The colony needs to grow 80% of its own food within 5 years, and your team is part of that calculation. You have real authority now. You make decisions that affect food supply for 200 people. When there is a crop failure in Bay 7, a fungal contamination that kills 3 weeks of spinach, you are the one who stays awake for 36 hours straight, rerouting growing schedules and calling in favors from the engineering team to rebuild the ventilation system. You solve it. The colony eats. Nobody throws a party for you. There are no parades on Mars. But for 2 days afterward, people look at you differently in the tunnels. At level 45, you are given access to the senior briefings. Every Thursday, the colony's leadership council meets for 2 hours and discusses things that are not shared with the general population. Oxygen reserve levels, the status of the next resupply mission, the results of geological surveys in the northern expansion zone, projections about which systems might fail in the next 18 months. You sit in these meetings and you realize something uncomfortable. The gap between what people on the lower levels believe and what is actually true is not small. It is not a crisis, but it is not nothing. Level 50, you are 5 years in. The colony now has 412 residents. A second habitat cluster has been completed in the eastern zone. There is a greenhouse the size of an aircraft hangar producing tomatoes, wheat, potatoes, and 17 types of leafy greens. There is a small workshop that manufactures basic components from Martian regolith, the first things ever made on another planet from local materials. At level 50, you are one of approximately 30 people who actually run this colony. Not in title, the official org chart has a director and a deputy director and a council of 9, but in function, you are the one who knows where the bodies are buried, metaphorically, and in one terrible case, from the second year, literally. You know which systems are fragile. You know which people are close to psychological breaking points. You know that the official oxygen reserve report understates the actual margin by about 12% because the director does not want to cause panic. Your quarters are in the upgraded residential section, 120 square feet, a real mattress, not a foam pad, a small window, not to the outside, but to an interior atrium where someone has managed to grow a single fig tree in a pressurized planter. The tree is 3 feet tall. It is the most beautiful thing on Mars. You eat at a table now, not a cafeteria bench. You have 2 colleagues you would call friends, real friends, not just survival proximity bonds. You have a small collection of things that matter to you. The photograph, a handwritten letter from your sister, a piece of red Martian rock that you picked up on your first surface walk and kept without quite knowing why. Level 60. The colony has been running 6 years and Earth is paying close attention. 3 corporations now hold partial operational contracts for the colony's expansion. A second colony, 40 kilometers to the north, is under construction. There is talk, not yet serious talk, but talk about a governing charter, about representation, about rights. At level 60, you are on the committee that is drafting the charter. You sit in a room with 11 other people, and you argue about what kind of society this is going to be, how resources get distributed, who gets to vote, whether children born on Mars, and there are now 6 of them, the oldest is 4, are citizens of Earth nations or citizens of something new. These conversations are the most important conversations in human history, and they are happening in a modular conference room that smells like recycled air and burns its fluorescent lights at 70% capacity to save power. Level 70. You are 7 years in. The colony has 600 residents. 3 of the original 43 founders have died, 2 in accidents, 1 from a respiratory illness that might have been treatable on Earth. Their names are on a plaque in the main corridor, though the plaque is printed on a metal sheet with slightly uneven text because the person who made it had never made a memorial before. At level 70, you are a senior official in the colony's governance structure. You have real power over resource allocation. You decide with 2 other people how the colony's energy budget is distributed between the residential blocks, the industrial systems, and the research facilities. These are not abstract decisions. In a cold Martian winter, and the winters are long, a wrong call on heating allocation means people get sick, or worse. You have privileges that nobody in the lower ranks has. You have a private communication terminal, which means you can send personal messages to Earth without going through the general queue. The queue is 16 hours long on busy days. Your messages go in too. You have access to the colony's small medical spa, a room with an infrared sauna and 2 massage chairs, built as a psychological wellness measure for senior personnel. You use it twice a week and feel guilty about it every time. The guilt doesn't stop you from going. Level 80. Something has changed in the colony's atmosphere that has nothing to do with the air recyclers. The first generation of colonists, people who came voluntarily, who chose Mars, who remember Earth as home, are aging into their 40s and 50s. The 6 children born on Mars are now between 4 and 9 years old. They have never been to Earth. They do not miss it. They do not understand missing it. At level 80, you are aware that you are helping to build a society that will outlast you, and that the society you are building is already different from anything you planned. The children call the tunnels home without qualification. They run through the corridors and argue about who gets to play in the atrium and complain about the food exactly the way children on Earth complain about the food. They think the suits are annoying. They have never been afraid of the dome cracking because they have never lived without the dome. You are governing a world. That sounds grand. Mostly it means arguments about water quotas and shift schedules and who gets priority access to the new medical scanner that arrived on the last supply ship. Level 90. You have been on Mars for 11 years. You are now one of 9 people on the colony's permanent council. The governing body that, by the terms of the draft charter, holds executive authority over all decisions affecting colony safety, resource distribution, and external relations with Earth. External relations with Earth. Think about that phrase for a moment. 115 years ago, when humans first walked on the moon, it was a feat so extraordinary that the entire planet stopped and watched. Now there is a colony on Mars with a governing council that has external relations with Earth. The species moved fast when it decided to. At level 90, your life is unrecognizable from your first year. You have a suite of rooms, 3 rooms, the first private bathroom in the colony's history, a small study where you keep your books, and the Martian rock and a framed image of the fig tree, which died in year 8 and was mourned more genuinely than some of the administrative announcements. You eat meals prepared by the colony's 2 trained chefs, who now cook for the council and for special events. The food is still limited. You are on Mars, but it is prepared with care, which is its own kind of luxury. You have power, real power. When you recommend that the northern expansion be accelerated, it is accelerated. When you say the new arrivals from Earth need extended quarantine because of a respiratory pathogen that came in on the last ship, there is quarantine. When you raise concerns about the behavior of the corporate representatives who have been embedded in the colony since year 6, those concerns are heard in a room where they cannot be dismissed. The corporate representatives are a problem. They are level 85 in practical terms, senior enough to attend high-level briefings, influential enough to shape resource contracts, junior enough that they cannot override the council directly. But they are patient. They are building something, slowly, inside the colony's governance structure. You can see it. You are not sure what to do about it. Level 95. The colony is 12 years old. 870 residents, 41 children, a second-generation habitat cluster that was designed entirely by engineers who had never been to Earth, using Martian materials and Martian conditions as their baseline rather than their exception. At level 95, you are the council's chair, the first human being to hold that title on another planet. You did not campaign for it. You were chosen by the 8 other members after a vote that lasted 40 minutes and was recorded in the colony's official log as routine. You are not sure it was routine. You are not sure anything about what you are doing is routine. Your decisions now extend beyond the colony's borders, such as they are. You are coordinating with the northern colony, 800 people, a different corporate charter, a slightly different governance model, on shared water extraction from the subsurface ice deposits in the equatorial zone. You are in negotiations with 3 Earth governments about the terms under which Mars-born citizens will hold legal status. You are managing a population that is increasingly split between people who see Mars as a mission and people who see it as home. The people who see it as home are getting louder, and they are right. Level 100. This is where the structure breaks down, or maybe where it begins to become something else entirely. There is no level 100 in any official document. The colony's charter does not describe it. The council does not use the term. But there is, within the colony's social fabric, a group of perhaps 6 or 7 people who occupy a position that cannot be fully explained by title or role. They are the founders who survived. The council chair, the chief engineer who has held the colony's primary systems together through 3 near-catastrophic failures and shows no sign of stepping back. The head of the agricultural division who quietly controls more of the colony's food security than any document reflects. At level 100, you are not exactly a ruler. Mars is too small and too transparent for anything as clean as rule. You are something more like a lens. Every major decision, every significant conflict, every question about what this place actually is and what it should become passes through you at some point. You walk through the colony's main corridor on a Tuesday morning and a 6-year-old girl born on Mars runs past you chasing something, laughing, completely unconcerned with your authority. An engineer stops you to raise a concern about the Eastern Dome's pressure seals. A council colleague falls into step beside you and mentions quietly that the corporate representatives have been meeting privately with 3 of the newer council members. You file all of it. You walk to the small observation bay at the far end of the residential block. One of 2 places in the colony where you can sit and look out at the surface directly, through a small porthole of ultra-hardened glass, and you look at the red dirt and the pale sky. 11 years ago, you were cold and hungry, and more alive than you had ever been, carrying cable through a pressurized tunnel at the bottom of a hierarchy you hadn't yet mapped, Now you are at the top of something, and from up here, what you see most clearly is how fragile all of it is. Not the domes, not the life support, not the food supply. Those are solved problems, or problems being solved. What is fragile is the social agreement, the belief that the people on this planet are building something together rather than competing over it. The trust that the person above you in the structure is not simply extracting from the people below. Humanity has never managed to sustain that trust for long back on Earth. Every city that ever rose eventually became a place where the powerful insulated themselves from the consequences of their decisions. Every frontier that ever promised equality produced its own aristocracy within a generation. Mars is no different, and it is completely different. And you are one of the 6 or 7 people on this planet who have enough visibility into both truths to carry the weight of what that means. The girl who ran past you in the corridor was born here. She will grow old here. She will never understand what it feels like to stand under an open sky with nothing between you and the sun. But she will understand things about surviving in a closed system, about the relationship between cooperation and life, about what it means to share air with 100 other people and know that every one of them is keeping you alive as much as you are keeping them. Maybe that is enough. Maybe it is more than enough. Maybe the children of Mars will figure out something that the children of Earth never quite managed. Or maybe they will make the same mistakes, only smaller and tighter and more visible, in a place where there is nowhere else to go. Either way, you will not see the end of it. Nobody alive today will. The question is what kind of beginning you leave them. If this made you think about what kind of world you would build from scratch, with nothing but red dirt and a closed dome and a few hundred human beings who have to trust each other to survive, hit subscribe. Because there are 100 more worlds to explore, and every single one of them says something true about the one we already live on.